All right, we're going to begin. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. This is our information session for our online executive training programs with Duke University's School of Public Policy. And we're excited for people to be here. For those who can't join us, if you're going to be joining us later on the recording, we hope that this session will be very helpful for you in understanding two of our online programs that Duke University's School of Public Policy is running during the summer for the year 2024. So today we'll just be starting off with a quick presentation from myself just to give you an overview of what our school is doing here. And then we'll be meeting two of our professors who are leading these summer's courses. So I'm really excited to have our folks here today. And I'm going to be introducing them in just 1 second here. So you can see them there with me. We have Hans Martin and Joey Sherlock with us. This is all being run by the Duke Center for International Development. That is Duke University's platform for education and research around international development topics. So if you are just joining us, we want you to also look at our website. You can look it up at dcid.sanford.duke.edu. We'll show you that later. So two of our programs that we're looking at today for our online programs. We have Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning for Development, and that is taught by Hans Martin. He is here. He'll be giving a full introduction, but I just want to let you know he's one of our longtime faculty who's been teaching monitoring and evaluation in our master's programs at the Sanford School of Public Policy. And then our second course, which is running in the second half of the summer, is our behavioral economics course. And that is taught by Joey Sherlock, one of our great scientists here at the Center for Advanced Hindsight, one of our premier research centers at the university. And he's been teaching the course with the Public Policy School in Behavioral Economics for many years as well. So we're happy to have both of them here. I'm Matthew Bunyi. I am the director for our executive education efforts at the School of Public Policy. And so I'm happy to speak to anyone offline or over email about these programs as well. When you talk to our team over email, I'm always happy to field any questions that you might have about general issues or potentially joining, as well as fielding some content questions about whether or not you think a course is appropriate for you. Then we will also have two team members that if you've already signed up for a course, you probably have received emails from them. And they are going to be helping you do the application process, go through paying tuitions, as well as connecting, if you eventually join, connecting to the actual programs and making sure you have all your reading materials, are able to join the online Zoom sessions, and those other type of logistical issues. So we have a couple people here, and I'm for the purposes of going through this quickly, I just want you to think about which program you're interested about learning today, and then we'll take a poll later if you've already applied to one of our programs. So I'm going to be asking those questions later to you. First, I want you to actually just hear about the programs. Since we don't have too many people in the room, I want you to just think about those questions and rather hear about them first, and then we're going to poll some people afterwards. So first, I'm going to hand it over to Hans Martin, who's leading our Monitoring, Evaluation, and Learning for Development program, or MELD, and that begins on June 3rd. So we're quickly approaching the classroom dates, and so we want to make sure that everybody has a chance to learn about the program and then make sure that they can put in their application. So I'm going to pass it over to Hans. Hans, why don't you tell us about the participant profiles and the overview?
Yeah, great. Thanks, Matt, for the introduction. And first of all, welcome to everyone. So the idea behind the program really is that it's aimed at practitioners, at consumers of evaluation, but also those who have to actually do evaluations, and particularly those who are interested in applying it to make things better. Planners, program analysts, accountants. Accountants need to understand a little bit about monitoring and evaluation. It's a different profession, but I think it can definitely benefit from it. The target audience that I'm largely working with and also teach mostly about is multilateral development agencies, bilateral ones, but also a lot of national development programs. And my experience, I can sprinkle that in here a little bit. I was at the World Bank for about 20 years, 5 years in the evaluation department, have been teaching. I think I started out at Duke in 2016, monitoring evaluation, but I've also been teaching monitoring evaluation at Georgetown and also been at Columbia. where fortunately I'm not right now because there are a lot of demonstrations going on and quite a bit of violence actually. Right now I'm joining you from Sri Lanka. It's one of the countries where I'm actually working right now in a World Bank project, doing in part monitoring evaluation, but also combining it with financing, results-based financing, those various aspects. So those are also parts of my background, and that's what I'm sort of tailoring my course to. And so anybody who works in development banks, donor agencies, NGOs, that's sort of the profile that we're kind of looking for here. Want to go on to the next slide, Matt? You want to talk about tuition deadlines? Okay, good. So one question is always for people who don't pursue monitoring, evaluation, learning as a profession is, why do we do these things? And the way I look at it is, and the way I sort of approach the whole course is, one, it's a very natural personal curiosity. You want to know what happens. It's intellectual curiosity, but it's also you do something, you invest a lot of effort into it. And at the end of the day, you want to figure out, well, what did it actually accomplish? And that's something that is both very personal, but it's also actually what drives projects, what drives institutions, and at the end of the day, what actually drives what happens to populations. They have expectations. I'm sitting right now in Sri Lanka, as I mentioned, and certainly the population has huge expectations of what the government is going to deliver. They're going to a fiscal crisis. Question is, can the government sustain its policy programs, its health programs, education, infrastructure, you name it. And so there's a lot of demand out there for doing evaluations on large-scale programs, small-scale programs, mostly around public policies, public interventions, and that ranges the whole gamut from the social sectors to infrastructure, also dealing with private sector, environment, and various areas. The other part is you have, of course, the institutions that are funding those programs, and they themselves also need to know, what have we actually accomplished? We're not just spending money, we're also trying to actually do what, well, either donors who are giving the money or taxpayers who are providing tax revenue are expecting in return for this money. So there's some degree of accountability that goes hand in hand with monitoring and evaluation. And the learning cycle is building on that accountability that, yes, there needs to be a feedback loop. The public needs to know what's actually happening to these programs and how do we actually make them better. Now, how to make them better, of course, is sometimes in the eye of the beholder. But what I'm trying to do is, and then we get to the next slide, is give it a little bit more structure to, it's not just opinions, it's a very structured approach. So let me just go on to the next slide, Matt. So the way I look at this is, how do we get to understanding what actually happened? We don't guess. Quite often what happens in development programs is you start out very ambitious, trying to collect data, go through the implementation of programs. But then at the end of the day, you have to make a choice quite often between, do you actually collect all of the data that you set out to collect, or do you do your best in terms of implementing programs and then figure out, okay, what data do we have left to work with? What I'm trying to encourage very much is, how do you build up the evidence base so that you can actually, at the end of a program, figure out, has it worked? Have we learned something from it? Can we do better? And that's a very structured approach. And this is sort of where it's overlapping just a little bit with Joey's course. It's based on a lot of human interactions. So when we talk about monitoring evaluation, this is not an abstract thing. It has to do actually with how humans respond to the policies that we're putting in place. And of course, we're making assumptions in the process. So validating those assumptions, the behavioral assumptions that we're building into these programs, are they valid? Are they still valid 12 months later? All those things are sort of part of the whole monitoring process of what goes on in the program. And they tell us a lot about what can be done, what can't be done, and how to collect the right evidence so that we can answer those questions. And to do that, of course, we need to have a very structured approach. We can't just randomly go about collecting data. And to have that structured thinking is, whenever there is sort of an assumption, you test it. Whenever there's a way that you think you're trying to achieve your outcomes, you're going through it in a very systematic, way, and that's what we're going to spend a good chunk of the time doing. How do you translate ideas of what you want to accomplish into a structured way of approaching that problem based on the evidence that you have and based on checking and rechecking assumptions that you're making in the process? So all of that is it's a structured approach in the sense that it remains flexible enough to adjust it, but there needs to be a strong framework embedded in it. And we'll go through a bunch of examples that we have. We'll talk a little more about the structure in 2 or 3 slides. Let me go to the next one. Actually, we are at the course structure already. So part of it, of course, is there are tools. There are evaluation approaches, there are instruments for data collection, there are methodologies for analyzing what to do with the data. And sometimes you realize that, well, actually, I don't quite have the data that I was hoping for. So what I'm doing is very much rooted in the practice of development, evaluation, learning. It's dealing with imperfection. It's dealing with the best available method to answer your questions, to satisfy your curiosity about what happens to these programs, and trying to figure out how do we actually build tools that make that easier, make it more scientific to the extent that we can, but it's always going to be different from an experimental exercise, at least when we talk about development applications, and it's going to be very different from research. So there's always a certain degree of judgment that's going to be involved in having development evaluations attached to learning and program analysis. The cycle then really is analyzing, learning, improving. And while we think about projects as individual ones, and we think about monitoring and evaluation as being attached to individual ones, really when we think about the longer term from the perspective of a population, the population doesn't really care so much about whether it's project number 1, 2, 3, or 4. For them, it's an ongoing improvement in infrastructure, in education, health. And so there's continuous learning that's going on. And what we're trying to get to in this course is how do we build up the cycle of learning on an ongoing basis based on the evidence that we've collected and based on answering the right questions, the questions that actually help us advance the understanding of what it is that we're trying. So let me go to, I think, what the last slide for my segment is, which is just overview of the, oh, it's not the last slide. So what can you expect? The way I approach it is I like to think of the lectures not so much as formal lectures, but rather interactive. Obviously, there's going to be a segment to it where it's tools, it's methods. So there's going to be some part of it where one has to really understand and get into the material and then ask questions. So the interaction really then takes place, and how do we apply this? Do we look at case studies individually? We have the options in this course. It's either bring something from your own work that you can use as a case study, or we can also have group work if you want to do that. I have also a couple of case studies that we can bring in, and you can sort of pick and choose from those if you want. So anyone who's working on something currently and is interested in using that for the course is certainly welcome to do so. What I also want to do is bring in a couple of outsiders, their colleagues from the Global Environment Facility, obviously from Duke itself, from the Inter-American Development Bank, from the 3IE, for those who are not familiar with the term, that's the International Initiative on Impact Evaluations. They collect an awful lot of evidence that is very useful for those who make use of that evidence to then build strong, robust evaluations. And they will sort of loosen up the whole structure and, of course, give you also different perspectives from the one that I may perhaps bring to it. Obviously, they will also be able to answer questions that you have more specifically about their areas. And so we'll try to cover a fairly broad range of thematic areas and geographically, of course, as well. And the course structure, more or less, in the next slide follows that. Sort of week 1 is so really getting very much down right away to how do we actually monitor what we're doing? How do we get the data? How do we link what we're trying to accomplish with figuring out what's the right data collection, what's the right instrument? How do we make sure that we don't distort what we're actually observing in the process of collecting the data? We all know the examples that if somebody's watching, then we all behave slightly differently from the way we do when nobody's watching. Then in the second week, it's really trying to figure out what are the best approaches to answer those evaluation questions that we have. And there obviously is a feedback loop between what kind of data do we need and what is the methodology that we want. Sometimes you can set out from the beginning what's the kind of evaluation approach that I want to take, and you can be very robust in collecting the right data. Sometimes you come in at a later stage and you're given more or less what data has been collected. So the approach that I'm trying to take is you don't always get the data that you're looking for. And you have to deal with the real world and then figure out what's the best way that I can actually answer the relevant evaluation questions. And in the end, it's all about how do we build up that evidence base that help us make better policies, better programs. How do we build that then into our future programs? I'm not going to go through the various, in the second row that you see the various items, that just gives you sort of an idea of what we'll do. There will be some statistics involved. I'm not going to be giving you instructions on statistics. There are ways to use that and apply it without necessarily being a statistician. But it is obviously to some extent a qualitative and a quantitative approach that is usually pursued. So there's some attempt at least to make sure that as robust as we can, we want to build that on quantitative data and test whether that actually is meaningful. As I said, very interactive case studies, individual projects, and there is the option of doing sort of a final presentation on the program that you're working on or the case study that you want to pursue, whether that's a formal presentation or whether it's more something that, reflections on how you worked your way through that problem, that we work out, or we can leave up to you how you feel more comfortable. There's no final exam for this course, so that is really how we want to wrap things up to take away the lessons that everybody's taking away from it. That's it for my quick overview, and with that, I hand it back to you, Matt.
Thank you, Hans. So there are some great questions that are popping up in the chat. Before I pass it over to Joey Sherlock, our next speaker, there were some quick questions. As a reminder, this program begins in June 3rd. That's just over a month from now. If you are interested in joining this program, the way you can apply to this program is the website that I posted in the chat. We'll also be following up with everyone over email. I know somebody had asked, when does this program accept applicants until? And do we offer this program at other times of the year? Currently, we only offer this program in the summer for both of these online programs, and that's due to the rigorous teaching schedule that all of our professors have to go about. And so it's hard for them to do both online courses as well as the in-person courses at Duke University itself during the semester. So with that, thank you very much, Hans. We will have more question and answer. I know some people have messaged me directly at the end of this, but we wanted to pass it over to our second presenter, Joey Sherlock from the Duke Center for Advanced Hindsight. And so I'm going to spotlight you, Joey, and you'll be able to share your screen.
Wonderful. I think the sharing settings still aren't quite right.
Oh.
Open share.
Yeah, you want to try again?
Yep, I'm in. Hello, everybody. Lovely to be here. So I'll spend probably about 10 minutes here talking about the Behavioral Economics for Development course. And maybe to start, so my name's Joseph Sherlock, Joey. I've been an applied behavioral scientist for about 10 years. I've been here 7 years at Duke, and as Matt said, have taught in the policy school for most of that, a few different courses. I also worked in central government in the UK in a few different departments as an applied behavioral scientist. And I'm just finishing up a PhD on the subject as well. So this is a fun course. We taught it, this is probably the third or fourth time we've gone through sort of similar material, and it's gone well each time. So look, broadly, the approach or the what we're looking to do here is teach a version of applied behavioral science and really thinking about behavioral science as a vehicle for innovation. So we start the course by looking to sort of challenge you to get you to think about yourselves as a social innovator, someone who's looking to build stuff, do stuff, make stuff in the world, make things work, and sort of bring cool things to life. And thinking about yourself as a social innovator in that way, we want you to see applied behavioral science as a vehicle to enable you to get from having an idea or even better, spotting a problem, all the way through sort of iterative innovation techniques to the point where you've got something that is working in the real world and you can show causally that it's working in the real world. And that's a whole process. So really what we're teaching, or the sort of backbone of the course, is this process, this structure of evidence-based, but also evidence-generating innovation, and applied behavioral science is the wrapper that we give that. So the three pillars that we'll be working with here: one is behavioral economics, one is human-centered design, and then one is rigorous evaluation. So let's start with behavioral economics as the first pillar. Behavioral economics really is sort of centered on this idea that we as humans are we're incredible animals. We can achieve a lot of things, but we're also flawed in lots of ways. We're limited in our ability to process information. We have limits on our cognitive processing abilities. We are rational to a point. We are what we would call boundedly rational, in that we sort of make optimal decisions with the tools that we have available, the time that we have available. And sometimes that's limited. And as a result of that, we are looking to sort of get through life, making decisions in complex environments with the tools we have available. And this means that we make mistakes. It also means that our environment shapes the way that we make decisions. We're very influenced by the context around us, be it physical or online or whatever, that makes the sort of shapes the way we choose. And that gives us, that's an insight. We'll spend time sort of digging into that, but it gives us opportunities as innovators to innovate with humans in mind. We're looking to understand what's going on in a given decision context, and then shape that to sort of shape the decision making in that context. And so we play with lots of behavioral ideas to help us think about shaping decision making context, things like defaults, things like loss aversion, things like social proof, social norms, pre-commitment, et cetera, et cetera. And so we'll be sort of introducing some of these concepts and giving examples and thinking through how you might apply them to shape different decision making environments. The second pillar then is human-centered design, or sort of citizen-focused design thinking. This is really the point here is that we are looking to look through the eyes of the user. We're looking to understand the problem from the perspective of the people that experience it most. And so what we're looking to do is draw from a range of sort of design thinking techniques and methodologies. And again, taking a little step back here, but if you're thinking about yourself as a social innovator, I want you to think about yourself as a social innovator that has a toolbox. And in that toolbox, there's a whole load of different methodological tools. Hans was talking about some of these. You can pull these tools out at different points. And these tools might be research methods. They might be ways of generating ideas, et cetera. And it's not the case that any one of these tools is necessarily better than the other, but more that they are more and less appropriate for different contexts. And so applying that here to this human-centered design methodology, we'll be looking to draw out and sort of teach you some of these human-centered design techniques, things like interviews, experiencing things through ride-alongs, running surveys potentially. These different tools you might be able to draw out and use in an exploratory way to understand the context of a situation through the eyes of the people who are experiencing it and who are having the problems that you are looking to solve. And so you'll get to a point where you'll be, understanding the context of behavioral economics and sort of diagnosing the problem and able to point out what's going on from a human perspective, and then iterating using your different methodologies, your tools in your toolbox, using human-centered design to take you from an idea through an iterative process to get you to something that seems to be working in the real world, more like a strong prototype or something you might pilot. And then we'll be encouraging you to think about when you have something that you think is working and you think is a good idea, and people are telling you this is a good idea, how do you know if it actually works or not? Does it actually achieve the goals you want to achieve? And drawing on rigorous evaluation, and we'll use RCTs, randomized control trials, as sort of the foundation here, but there's lots of tools and techniques you can do and use to get to causality. But RCTs, randomized control trials, are, you know, the strongest, if sometimes hard to apply, the strongest version. And this enables you to take an idea, to test it in a rigorous way and say, we can be certain that this idea works or it doesn't work. And we can get into discussions about that. So to sort of recap, again, you will learn how to be a social innovator using applied behavioral science as your vehicle for innovation, and you'll be drawing on these three main pillars of innovation: behavioral economics, human-centered design, and rigorous evaluation. And of course, we'll be applying this in a development context. And so if we think about applied behavioral science as a field, as a method of innovation, it's really about 15 years old. You sort of pinpoint the start of the applied side of the field, at least, to around the sort of 2010s. And in that time, it's really spread as government offices taking on different teams, or embedding people, or projects embedding people. And the spread has, in that first sort of decade, has been really in North America and Western Europe. But in these last, as we've gone along, and particularly in these last 5 years, it's really, really spreading beyond that and sort of becoming increasingly global. So the Global South is really adopting this. And that is where we will focus our attention on this course. Is we'll teach the principles and the pillars that we just walked through, but we'll be using context and examples, drawing from development context and thinking about how to apply these skills in nuanced environments, looking to also draw from you all as participants for your experience and your insights, and looking to make it quite collaborative and dynamic in that way. So I think, and to speak briefly about the syllabus, I think we start in early July, and we have 4 weeks. We have, I think, 3 classes a week, and we are reasonably well structured as the course goes on to run through the different pillars, but also provide policy deep dives into different policy areas, and there'll be opportunities for you all to work together on projects. We have readings each week and little fun reading quizzes to go along with it. And then it wraps up in the end with final presentations. So it's lots of fun. Last summer was really good, and we've done it a few times before that, which was great as well. Alrighty, I'll pause there. Happy to answer questions, and thank you.
Thank you very much, Joey. So everyone, in case you are interested in either of these programs, I'm pasting the website for the courses, both of our online courses here. Thank you, Javed. Thank you very much, Javed. We'll look forward to your email. So if you're interested in either of these programs, you can go to our website, and that will have both of our online programs where you can join. There was another question in terms of tuition. So very important. There is a tuition rate to join either of these online programs. Upon completing the programs, you will get a certificate from Duke University and our Center for International Development. And the tuition covers the fees to, of course, pay our instructors. And so we have special discount rates for our special tuition rates and scholarships for those who are attending from alumni affiliation. That's alumni through either our master's programs or alumni from one of our previous executive training programs. I'm happy to see some alumni in the audience. So I've been connecting with you and discussing over the chat. I'm very happy that you've been able to attend today, and we hope that you'll be able to come back. So if you are interested, please feel free to write us and explain your situation, and we can entertain scholarship options for you based on your situation and your connection to Duke University, or a potential public sector partner as well as nonprofit partner. We're able to also provide some limited scholarship funding for folks on those situations. The last thing I'll say about the tuition, which was another question that we did receive, was in terms of payment plans. So these are online programs, and we understand that many people are coming from the Global South, So Duke is able to provide flexible payment options where you were able to pay, of course, the tuition over amount of time. At the end of the day, we are an education center, and we'd love for people to be able to join the programs at a tuition rate that is flexible for their specific situation. And that is, I just want to make sure that everyone is aware of that. I did receive another question. I want to repeat this one. Somebody asked again, is when are these programs running? So just to reiterate the dates, and these dates are available on the website that I posted earlier. So monitoring, evaluation, and learning, that is taught by Hans Bomer, and that is starting on June 3rd and will go towards until June 21st. This is an online program. It meets 3 times a week, and it will start at 9 a.m. Eastern and go until 11:30 Eastern time zone. And then for behavioral economics, that's in the second half of the summer, this summer 2024, and that will begin in July 8th and go until August 8th. And that also meets Monday, Wednesday, Friday, starts at 9 a.m. and ends at 11:30 a.m. So if you have issues with those timings, please feel free to reach out and explain the issue that you're exploring. We've had people join from all the way in Myanmar, Thailand, Taiwan, those time zones, as well as plenty of people join from any time zones west of that and join synchronously. I think that's one of the things I do want to share is all of these are live classes, so you do not have to think that you will not be able to ask questions directly to an instructor. You'll have the benefit of, if you are confused, be able to immediately interact with a faculty member here at Duke and say, hey, this particular topic is quite difficult for me. Can you explain it again? Or here's my situation. How would you apply it to the situation that I am in? And that's one of the big benefits, of course, of online programming. Having said that, all courses are recorded, and our learning system, our online management course system, allows you to access the recordings for 1 year. So you'll be able to, of course, sit through class, and then if you want, 6 months later, if something seems relevant all of a sudden because of your current work or a new job that you have, you'll be able to rewatch that class and be able to reapply or recontextualize what you just heard. So we're happy to take questions now. I know there's somebody that just joined. If you have questions, I think I've answered many of them, but please feel free to chat me if you have questions, or you can raise your hand and as well ask the questions directly. If there aren't any other questions, Morris, I know you just joined. If you have any additional questions, feel free to write us as well. And you can write to me directly at the following. I'll chat it in there for everyone. And as a reminder, you can go to learn about our courses here, and I'm going to post that one more time, and we will follow up with everyone over email with the recording of this session, as well as information in terms of payment, application, all of those types of logistical questions that come up. So thank you again. Thank you everybody for joining. Thank you Hans and Joey for explaining the courses and talking about your vision for Duke's 2 online courses that are really essential skills for most practitioners going forward, and we really hope that people would adopt both of them. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Marissa. Have a good one.